Welcome to Evolution on the Mic. I am your host, Ariana de la Cruz.
And I'm your co-host, Antoine Dove.
And we are back, y'all. Season 5, The Leader in You. Episode 2, The Various Styles of Leadership, Part 1. Y'all, in our last episode, we explored the definition of leadership and its significance for the podcast vision. We also shared a TED Talk video of a girl who displayed leadership at such a young age. It was highly inspirational and motivating. I recommend to anyone that did not watch that episode to go ahead and watch it. It was impactful. It set the foundation for everything that we're doing with this season about leadership by displaying what leadership is in this young girl through this TED Talk and us defining it and us also letting you guys know the reason why we decided to talk about leadership in this podcast. So check it out if you didn't already. On today's episode, though, we will be discussing the various types of leadership styles, providing insights into how each can be effectively utilized. However, y'all, to ensure that we have enough time to cover each style in depth, we decided to divide the list into 3 parts. So today is going to be part 1 of the 3. But before we get into all that, Antoine, how are you? How you been?
I'm well. As usual. Things are going good on my side. I am getting ready to hop on a flight here in the next couple of days. I'm going out to visit my daughter in LA. It's her birthday, so I get a chance to go and spend some time
when's
with
her
her.
Birthday? What day is it? Her
October
birthday?
22nd is her
Don't
birthday.
you have a birthday too, Antoine?
Yeah, it's coming up next
when
month.
is it?
It's in November.
Oh, next month. Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
it's next
Because
month.
you're because I know that you're Scorpio. So I was like, I know
Yeah.
Scorpios is like October, but at the end of October in November.
Yeah, she's right on the cusp. If you follow astrology, she's a librarian, but she's like right on the cusp of it, like between cusp of Scorpio and stuff. But yeah, so go out and spend some time with her and take her out to dinner and take her to just spend that daddy-daughter time, which I don't get a chance to do enough throughout the year. So yeah, I'm excited about that. That's definitely the highlight of my weeks coming up here soon.
Awesome. That's good. I'm glad you're gonna get to spend some time with your daughter. I know how important she is to you, and for her birthday, that's amazing. And also yours too, because yours is coming up.
Yeah, we get to celebrate together. What about you? What's going on? What's new?
I'm good. I just want to give everybody an update. I know the last time that we spoke was about how stressed out I was with my dog, and just an update. He's doing well. The doctor had initially told me that he possibly could have Cushing's disease because of his age and his liver levels were high, but thank God, after some more analysis, he doesn't show any signs of that Cushing's disease, but he's on some supplement to decrease the liver levels again. So we'll check back in 30 days with the blood work to see if the supplement for the liver enzymes can go down. So I'm happy about that. Like that's major win for me this week. That was really stressing me out. So I feel good.
Yeah, it's a true blessing. Good. I know how much Prince means to you. So yeah.
Exactly. Like everything stops. Everything stops. He's like, my number one, my everything, my best friend, my son that, I don't have kids. So he's everything to me. So definitely, everything's just going back to normal with work and, grinding and doing everything I have to do. But for some time, it was just making sure that he was okay. So now I just got a routine with him, making sure that, he's taking the things that the doctor told me to give him and the specific timing, which is, not a problem for me because I don't play that with medicine or even when I'm sick. Like I'm very timely when I have to take my meds. So yeah. So I'm sure he will be better.
Prince. Love it.
100%, 100%. I thought it was important in this season, right? Because we're talking about leadership, we're talking about the different styles of leadership, and there's so many styles, right? So what we want to do is bring forward to you guys the common leadership styles, the one that, is mainly used and seen and heard of. So those are the ones that we're going to discuss. But I want you guys to know that although we're going to be bringing to you guys the top 10 common leadership styles, that each leadership style has its own strengths and weaknesses, right? So like a good leader, like an effective leader, I should say, they blend these different leadership style. That's what they often do. They blend these leadership styles depending on the situation. So depending on what's going on, they tend to adapt to different leadership styles. But I also want to add that some leaders do lean more towards some than others, right? Some of them have to learn how to adapt to certain styles because it doesn't come natural for them, but it doesn't mean that you can't hone even a little bit of all of them. It just depending on the situation, what's going on, what predicament you're in, and what type of leadership style is needed for that situation. So I want to put that out there to begin with, that they're all going to have the strengths and the weaknesses, and it's just about combining, all of them as needed. Or, if you lean on more to one, then that's fine too. But we wanted to make sure that you guys were aware of all of them and have that information to see how these can benefit you as an individual. Okay. And the 10 top leadership styles, I'm going to kind of like break them down to you. Like I'm going to list them. And then today we're going to discuss the four of them. And then the next episode, we're going to discuss 3. And then in the third part, we're going to discuss the other 3. So the ones that we're going, the top 10 ones that we're going to be discussing, I'm just going to name them. It's transformational leadership, democratic leadership, transactional leadership, autocratic leadership, servant leadership, laissez-faire leadership, situational leadership, charismatic leadership, authentic leadership, and bureaucratic leadership. Okay. So the one that we're going to start with, that we're going to kick us off with, is transformational leadership. Right? When I think about a transformational leader, it's someone that their main focus is to inspire you, to motivate you, to achieve your full potential, and to embrace change. Right? They're someone that can like think of a vision that they have for the things that they want to do, the things that they want to change, but they have an ability to communicate that vision so well that it motivates other people to want to partake in that vision. Like people just want to give of themselves. People just want to like be like us, like they're willing to sacrifice of themselves, their time, because that they feel like the purpose of that leader's vision is so grand and it's so like clearly communicated that they see themselves being a part of it and they genuinely want to be a part of it. So this transformation leader just has that ability to do that, right? They're visionaries. Right? All leadership in their own way, they're visionaries, but this type of leader, they can share that vision that others want to be a part of. They get people excited for it, right? They have an ability to like inspire you and motivate you, right? And they do that by appealing to your values, to your emotions, right? Which encourages you to want to go above and beyond your own self-interest for the good of the mission. So you're putting yourself aside, right? Like it's like they're very good at that because they listen to you. You feel like, okay, this person is hearing me. I can totally see myself being a part of this grand vision. Like I'm part of a mission, I'm part of a purpose. And they do that by appealing to your values, to your emotions, to get you, in alignment with what's going on. So you kind of feel like you're volunteering in doing this and it doesn't feel like work. It doesn't feel pressured, Transformational leaders act as role models, demonstrating the behaviors and attitudes that they wish to see in their followers, which builds trust and respect. Okay. So not only are, like I mentioned, not only are they talking about the things that they want to see happen, but they model these behaviors, they model these values, they model the things that they want to see in their followers, which helps the followers build themselves up to wanting to do these things because they have a guide, they have someone that they can look up to, someone that is role modeling these things, so they have kind of like a roadmap to follow, right? So this helps build the trust, the respect towards the leader, okay, because they're modeling the way. They empower, so they have like a big ability to empower people, and they do this by allowing their followers to make decisions on their own, which also builds their confidence. Okay. So transformational leaders, in a nutshell, like they're able to create a vision that others want to be a part of, making this leadership style dynamic and uplifting. One of the leaders that, when I think about transformational leadership, like, who has displayed this, just so that you guys can like fully understand what a transformational leadership is Nelson Mandela, right? And I'm going to give you the reasons. When you think about Nelson Mandela, he had an inspiring vision, right? Because that's one of the main things, right? They have a vision and they're really good at communicating their vision and making it happen, right? Nelson Mandela had a clear vision for a democratic and free Africa where all people, regardless of race, could live together in harmony. That was his main vision, right? He empowered others. He inspired millions to work towards social justice and equality, right? You talk about courage and sacrifice. Nelson Mandela, he spent 27 years in prison for his beliefs because he had this vision and nothing was going to stop him. But, you know, he got arrested for these things and spent 27 years in prison. This demonstrated an immense courage and commitment to his cause, right? And this also motivated other people to never give up on their dreams and never give up for the cause, never give up on their visions, right? Nelson Mandela, he led by example, right? His integrity and dedication to peace inspired others to lead with similar values, emphasizing the importance of forgiveness and understanding, right? So through these qualities, Nelson Mandela transformed not just a nation, but also inspired people around the world to strive for justice and equality and to follow their dreams. Because I know Nelson Mandela in my life has been a big inspiration. Like just the fact that he went through what he went through for 27 years in prison. A lot of people would have just given up. I mean, God knows I'm willing to give up after 3 years of doing something and not seeing the light and not seeing nothing come to fruition. And I know for a lot of us, you know, we tend to give up before we see the fruits of our labor. And 27 years, like think about that. You're in prison, you know, where you're treated like utter crap, like you don't matter, right? In prison, like your self-esteem can plummet real quick, but not his. He kept going. He still kept talking about his vision. He still kept talking about how he's going to get everybody out of, you know, captivity, and he's going to, you know, have his vision come to life. And when he got out of prison, like he did so many major things to bring everything that he said to life, which is to this day why he's in the history books, why we still talk about him as this great leader and a transformation leader, because he caused a great transformation, you know, in the world. Does that make sense, Antoine?
Totally. Yeah. And it also makes sense that with the transformational leader, that it takes time and it takes perseverance, because as we know, transformations aren't quick. Transformations take time. You have to allow things to develop and grow, and there's oppositions. And so, yeah, I think Nelson Mandela really embodies all of that from a transformational leadership, because yeah, it took him years to make the change that he envisioned and that he saw, but he was persistent, and it happened. And just,
yeah,
man,
and
it's
so many
amazing.
people followed him because of
Yeah.
his persistence,
Yeah.
because of his patience, because of his ability to never give up. For him, like even when he was going through, he was still inspiring people, right? He
Right.
was still motivating people. Like, I'm not giving up. Like, you can keep me in prison in my body, but not in my mind and in my spirit. Right.
Mm.
Like, I'm still striving. Like, I'm still hopeful. Like, I know that this is going to come to pass. And it did, against all odds, you
Yeah.
know, and that was huge for a lot of people in that time until this day, that when something minimal happens in our life, we shut down and stop. And it's like, he's just a great example of never giving up. You know, he's a great example of, you know, someone that you want to follow, because a lot of people don't hone that ability. They just quit. But we tend to look up to people and want to rub shoulders with those people that, against all odds, continue striving for their dreams, you know? So transformation leadership for me is like one of those ones that, like, you know, hit home, because that's one of the type of leadership styles that I want to be, that I strive for,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And getting my master's in leadership, when I studied transformational leadership, I remember writing papers just on this topic, and, you know, how I want to change the world and how I want to inspire people and motivate people. And, you know, specifically with Mentors Way, because when I think about Mentors Way, you know, I want to have amazing mentors for my mentees, right? And the way that I'm going to have amazing mentors is by giving the vision so compelling, so clearly, so clear, that these mentors are gonna want to be on board to be part of Mentors Way, right? It's just about having that vision, being able to to communicate that vision in a compelling way so other people could want to jump on board and say, I want to be a part of that cause. Like, I want to be part of that purpose. Like, being a part of that purpose gives me purpose, right? Like, not a lot of people, not everyone, feels like they have a purpose in life. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know if you know anybody, Antoine, in your life that like just feel like, I don't know what my purpose is, you know? But that person can help someone else with their purpose, and they feel their purpose in that, right? They feel purposeful because they can follow a leader that has this grand vision that they feel like, I want to be a part of that. And because of that, now they have a purpose, which is helping that vision come to life. So I just love everything that encompasses a transformation leadership. So I hope everybody that's watching, really grasp that. But if you have any questions, always feel free to in the comments if you have any questions about transformation leadership or any leadership styles, and we'll be glad to answer any questions. But yeah.
Yes. I mean, transformational, I think, is a great place to start as we think about all the different leadership styles that we want to talk about today, because I think it's one of those ones that has such a profound impact that lasts forever. Like Nelson Mandela is one of the most iconic figures in all of history and will ever, go down as that because of what he's done. But another leadership style that tends to come up, and this one tends to be a little bit more, I see it more in the day to day. It's also playing out really big now with it being election year and things that's coming up with the election. And that's democratic leadership. And essentially how I think about democratic leadership is that it involves you as a leader being able to make decisions with amongst a team of members. So it's not one person making one decision or calling all the shots. You're working with the team and you guys are collaborating and you're looking for ways to encourage input from others. And so that's why it's important as you think about the election year that we're in today, right? Like a lot of the candidates that are running, regardless of the party, regardless of their affiliations and how they want to do things, their goal is, as we are constituents, the people that are electing and putting them in office, their goal is to convey their vision to us and then also put in place systems, put in place policies that allow us to work together to form an even better America or to form an even better whatever it is. Like if they're running in more of a local government, whatever. But that's what democratic leadership is. And so there's a few characteristics that democratic leaders need to be successful in their role of bringing those people together. One, which I think is the most important one, is open communication. If you don't have open communication and things aren't transparent, how can people trust you? And we've talked about this in previous episodes. We've talked about trust, and someone who is a great democratic leader, they find ways to keep communication open. There's transparency. There's constant feedback and sharing of ideas. It's an open conversation. There's nothing that's happening behind closed doors. So I think that probably when we think about a lot of the presidential elections and things is coming up now, you're probably like, well, there's things that happen behind closed doors. And I agree with you. I think no one's perfect, right? That's one thing about these leaderships. Like there's always room for improvement. But someone who's at their best, who's an outstanding democratic leader, there are open conversations. There are things that are being had. There's a communication that's going on. Another thing is they have a natural ability to empower team members. They have a way, because again, to get someone to open up, not everyone feels comfortable opening up and sharing their thoughts, sharing their feelings, or even communicating, new ideas. And so as a democratic leader, you have to find ways to empower people to speak up. You also find ways to empower people by delegating tasks. You can't do it all yourself. And so in getting things done as a democratic leader, you also have to find ways in which you are encouraging people to step outside of their comfort zones. You're encouraging people to take responsibility. You're encouraging people to be a part of the solution. And to be a part of the solution, sometimes you may run into people who don't feel comfortable doing that. It feels a little bit icky. It's something that they're just not used to. And as a democratic leader, you find ways to empower them to make those changes. And then the last one of the more bigger and larger concepts and characteristics of a democratic leader is their ability to collaborate around decision making. Again, it's not one person making a decision. It's a group of people, a team of people, a cabinet of people who are working together for one cause, one decision, it's not the leader who's making that final decision. They've collectively, collaboratively talked about it, and they're like, hey, this is what we're going to do. We all are on the same page. And so when I think of back in history of someone that embodied being a democratic leader and also staying in line with, the presidential year and the elections and things that's going on, I think Abraham Lincoln's probably the one that comes to mind the most when we think about democratic leaders. He was at such a pivotal time in the US history with the Civil War and things that are going on at that time. And as a leader, he had to take two different sides, right? North, South, different sides, even things that's going on within the racial times of the US at that time. There was a lot of turmoil in the US, and he had to find ways to say, hey, look, all of these people that are in the US who have different ideas, different visions, we as a country still have to come together. We have to unite as a country, and we have to move forward, and we have to show our strength. We can't be divided. And to do that, he had to take people with different ideals, different thoughts, different ways of doing things, and say, now how do we all come together? And I think he did that in a very successful way.
Yeah.
And even with the Emancipation Proclamation that he brought forth, there's a lot of things that he did that moved us as a nation forward. And to do that, it took some very strong democratic leadership skills to be able to do that. And so that's one of the leadership skills that I feel is more, it tends to show up more day to day. I think we all are in situations, even when I think about myself, I'm in situations where I have to decide, am I going to put on my Democratic leader hat today because I'm going to be convincing two sides of people who are at odds with each other? How do we come together? Or like, am I putting on a different hat? Like, am I doing something that I need to, inspire and motivate and different things? And so I think Democratic leadership is one of those things that can be applied on a day-to-day basis, even in your personal lives. If you don't see yourself as like, oh, well, I'm not the president of the US or I'm not running for office, that's okay. These leadership styles will even apply in your parenting life, can even apply. I mean, think about it. I'm a dad. And so I have just my daughter, but like if we want to do something, we have to have that conversation. Hey, sweetheart, what are we going to do today? Like, what do you want to do? And she may have one idea, I may have one idea as well, but together we have to come to a decision. And how do we get there in a way that she feels heard and she feels like daddy cares, and that we still get something done for that day, whatever we choose to make for our goal. So yeah, that's where it landed. So I don't know what you have any thoughts about democratic leadership or where that may have shown up.
I mean, I think that democratic leadership, is like an amazing type of leadership because it's not just about what the leader wants, what the leader's agenda is, right? It's about like, how can we collaborate together to reach this common goal, right? Like it's about being heard. It's about hearing and being heard. So it's a two-way street, so you can see that in parenting, you can see that in a relationship, you can see that in a business, environment, right? There's two people that have agendas, but it's about like kind of like, playing chess, right? How can we work into this to get to where we need to get, right? Like, let's work together to figure this out and not against each other, right? So I definitely like, that is an awesome leadership style to have when you are just willing to hear other people and come to decisions and come to an agreement together, right? That's going to be like a win-win, right? And I know that, in democracy, that's what it's about, right? It's how can we come to a win-win together without one feeling like they're being left out, right? And if they are being left out, there's a conversation about it. Like, this is why we got to do this way. Like, so everyone understands that everyone is in a good place. So
Yep, 100%.
I definitely love that. The one that we're going to go through next, right, is transaction leadership. And this kind of like sways a bit away from what we've been talking about with transformational leadership, somebody that, inspires and motivates and, has this amazing vision with purpose, right? And with democratic leadership where, you're collaborating and you're working together to reach a common goal and you're hearing each other out, right? So transactional leadership, this style is all about having clear tasks and expectations, right? This style emphasizes on setting goals, giving rewards or consequences based on performance, right? And it uses rewards or money, whatever the job is, to motivate people. So you get motivated by a reward, something that you did. You get motivated by fear, or consequence. So this is all about structure, setting clear tasks, and having clear expectations to move forward in whatever it is that you want to get done, right? So some of the characteristics that we think about when we think about a transactional leader is, this leader needs to set clear expectations, right? So they're defining the roles and expectations clearly, ensuring everyone knows what is required to achieve those goals, right? So they're setting the standards, very black and white. This is what you need to do. Do not come out of that, right? There's no, I'm going to, you have input here. The follower has no input. It's just about, this is what gotta get done, right? And do it. If you don't, consequence. So again, like another characteristic is rewards and punishment, right? So this style relies on systems of rewards for good performance, like bonuses or promotions, or penalties, right, for poor performance, like reprimands or demotions. Okay. Another one is a structured environment, right? The approach creates a structured environment where processes and rules are paramount, which can lead to efficiency. So with this one, processes and rules trumps everything else. Like there has to be structure, there has to be processes, there has to be rules, and it has to be followed to the T in order to, excel in this style, right? For the follower, like you're going to have to be doing things in a certain order, in a certain way, right? So again, like this style motivates through incentives, right? So they're mainly motivating you through financial or material rewards. And when I think about like what type of like example, right, to kind of bring this home a little further for you guys, there's two that comes to mind, right? So there's a sales manager, right? A sales manager often uses leadership to set specific targets, offer incentives for meeting those goals, and they monitor your performance closely, right? So not only are they telling you what you need to do, but they're looking to see if, like maybe monthly or quarterly, are you hitting the goals? Are you performing to where you need to perform? They're monitoring you closely because again, they got to make sure that they're hitting their quotas because it's about rewards or penalties or reprimands. So like a sales manager is a good example of when this style is needed. Another one is military leaders, right? So military leaders, they often employ a transactional style, providing clear commands and expecting adherence to established procedures, right? With rewards for successful missions and penalties for failing to follow orders. So if you're in the military, can you imagine not following orders, right? When you're in the military, you're working with a group of people. There's a mission that has to be done. Like there's going to be enemies coming towards you. Everybody has to be in alignment. Everybody has to follow to the T exactly. If not, one false move, people die, right? Like there's severe consequences. So it's not, in this situation, it's not about, money, but it's about your life, your livelihood. Like something terrible can happen if you're not following the order that needs to be followed. So those are the two that kind of come to mind for me when I think about a transactional leadership. It's different from other leadership, but does the differences of this leadership make it any worse than others? No, because as we're talking about military leaders, it's important for a sales manager. It's important to follow this structuredized goals and clear tasks and clear expectations, monitoring performance type of style. It's heavily needed, but it might not be needed in everything, right? So again, it's about adjusting the style to the situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think also the expectations is what like really jumps out for me with transactional leadership is that there are clearly defined expectations for you. And so there isn't a lot of room for there to be ambiguity because it's very clear. This is what my expectations are of you and this is what you need to do. And I think that's really important in certain situations like you mentioned just like the military because you want to make sure that everything's being done a certain way because if there's any deviation from how you're doing it, it could be someone's life. Like someone could lose their life behind that. On this other sense, I could see even we talk about this as we go forward in this like I could also see where this could be used for bad and where it wouldn't work for someone's situation where it could feel very micromanagey if someone's doing this and you are in a position where you don't really enjoy being micromanaged and it doesn't work well. And so I think as with all these leadership styles, I think there's kind of a good and a bad of how you can look at it, but all of them serve a purpose.
Yeah,
And
they
I
all
think
serve a
that
purpose.
the goal of all of this, right, is to find how these different leadership styles can serve a purpose to get what you have been called to do in your life to do. So if God has called you to do something exceptional, which all of us, he's called us to do something. You may not know what it is yet, but he's called you to do something. Whatever that is, it's important to understand when these different leadership styles need to be applied, because it's not a one fits all. Like, you can't go around being a democratic leader all the time. There's some situations where you're going to need to be a transactional leader to be able to get the mission and the vision for the company move forward, you know?
Yeah. And even like with I'm sorry to interrupt you, but like even in a company where that may be just starting off, right? With new employees, right? You might need to use like more clear expectations. This is what you need to do. But then as time goes by, other things can happen. So you can even utilize certain styles for specific things and sway into something else as things develop. So, but there's certain people that might lean towards a lot just in their natural abilities, not in their natural God-given gifts, right? And callings to be a transactional leader, right? They might have some struggles with being a transformational leader and, talking about a vision and how we're going to make this happen, because that's very gray. You're working with different personalities and people. You got to, adhere to their, you got to listen to their values and like their emotions. And transactional leadership is not about your values, your emotions. It's just about, this is what got to get done. And step by step, are you doing that? And if you're not, you got to go.
Gotta go.
Like, it's not worth it. So, but some people may lean towards more transaction leadership than, transformational. And that's totally fine, right? Because again, these things can be learned. They can be practiced over time where you can follow them to a certain extent. So it's not like, well, I have nothing in me that's a transformational leadership. So, I'm more transactional. So I'm just going to get stuff that, leans more towards that. And that's okay, but be open, right, to these other styles, because at some point that might be something that, might be required of you. And at least you have an idea of what it takes, right? Because anything in life can be learned, even if we have certain things that are more innate in us, more natural in us, we definitely can grow into different styles.
Yeah. And it's so interesting you brought up transactional, because a leadership style that is also, it falls in line with transactional, except it's a little, what I would say this one's a little bit more controlling than transactional, because I think transactional comes across as though it's a bit controlling, but it's not. What it is it's setting a standard, it's setting a process and a procedure. And the controlling one, I'm calling it controlling, is autocratic leadership. And I say it's controlling because the leader in autocratic leadership, they make unilateral decisions without little to any input from anyone. And so I say controlling, and I say that, from my perspective, but I think there are situations where autocratic leadership plays out, which I'll talk about. But when you think of an autocratic leader and who they tend to make very centralized decisions. Like, they retain control over decisions. They do not seek input from anyone. They're like, this is what we're going to do. It's a unilateral decision that's being made. And you have to kind of just fall in line. There's clear authority of who that person is and what their role is in terms of a leader and what that means for the organization, what that means for what they're trying to accomplish. They establish a clear hierarchy. This is who I am. I am the leader. I will be running this. You will not be telling me what to do. You will not
like a
be
dictator.
It does sound, it's very much like a dictator. It truly is. And what's so interesting is, in these situations, like, they have very direct communication. They tend to communicate with like a top down kind of manner. So they're not going to go directly to the person on the front line and say, I'm going to tell you what to do. There's a hierarchy. They're going to tell one of their people below them, who's going to tell someone below them, that communicates the message. But the message is not asking for their opinion and if they will do that. It's like, no, you need to do this because this is what we're telling you to do. And when I looked up, examples of like, who are some great people who not want to say great people, but who are people who tend to deploy an autocratic leadership style, the first names that came up was like Joseph Stalin and Adolf Hitler and all these people.
That's what I was thinking.
And it makes perfect sense, right? But then like I didn't want to lean so much towards the negative because we all have our viewpoints of, you know, what we think about people such as Hitler and what
Yeah.
he's done, right? But like in some situations, an autocratic leader, it does make sense. And it's kind of the same lines of what Ariana was talking about in the military. And that was what came to me was like a military colonel. Like in some situations, you do not have the time and the risk is too great for you to have a democratic decision of how you're going to move forward. In
Yep.
some situations, someone needs to be the person to just call the shot, and with that comes heavy responsibility because if things go wrong, it's on you. And so it takes a certain type of person to be an autocratic leader. Yes, it's easy, I think, in some cases to be a dictator and tell everyone what to do. But to me, on the flip side, I think it's hard to be able to say, I'm going to take responsibility for everything that happens. It's easy to tell someone what to do. I think it's hard to accept the responsibility of what you told them was wrong. And to me, I think a military colonel or someone who is, you know, very high up in the military, they're stepping into that role and they're taking that role because they know that they have this huge responsibility that they must carry. And they can't allow the decision that's going to be made, whether that is whether we're going to invade this country, whether we're going to, and again, they're seeing the people that they're overseeing are regiments and battalions. I mean, these are hundreds of thousands of soldiers and men and women who have said, I'm going to give my life to protect and serve this country. And they're making decisions that involves their life. And so the responsibility is heavy for an autocratic leader. But I do think there are situations where an autocratic leadership style makes sense. It's the complete opposite of a democratic
Yeah.
leadership style. But I think there's times where you want to deploy that, especially if it means like someone's life is at stake. I mean, I didn't even think about this, but like even in situations where someone's under surgery and you think about like a hospital, right? And
Yeah.
there's a lead surgeon and they have to make the decision of whether or not we're going to cut this or move this or change this. And if I make the wrong decision, this could be this person's life. Everyone
Yeah.
else there is taking their direction and lead from this head surgeon. And they have to make those shots and make those decisions, you know?
Yeah, no, 100%. I thought about when I was working with Children's Home Society,
Mm,
and it was, working with kids that were neglected, abused, by their parents, so they were taken away from their parents, and we had to make really sensitive and sometimes, time sensitive decisions on what we're going to do and how we're going to handle it. And I was a supervisor,
mm,
and the decision sometimes wasn't even left on me if they were that grand, if they were, so they would go up to the director of the company, which was like, at the top of the chain in that
mm,
in that in that organization. So it was like the director, the operations manager, and then the supervisors, and then the people that were mainly running around doing what they had to do. So there was times where we would have to get together and the director would make the decision on cases, on the ones that were like very serious, like time sensitive, like decisions had to be made on what was going to happen with that child, right? And it was like, we'll all have to get together and see like how we were going to proceed. But the responsibility ultimately laid on her, like
mm,
not all the time, but I remember those times where it was like, you have to go to speak to such and such, like we all have to have a meeting with the supervisor, the operations manager, and the director, because ultimately like things laid like fell in her hands, right? So in that moment, like she had that role of that, like, of that autocratic leadership, because it was like we can have our own voice and what we think is best, but at the ultimately things were on her, and she will
mm,
have to make the decision, because we, you know what I mean, whatever happened, ultimately she knew that it was going to be her behind the line, like, you know what I mean?
mm.
So I mean,
Yeah,
I think it's necessary, just like everything we're talking about, like it's necessary depending on the situation, depending on the job, depending on the mission,
right.
right? It's going to be needed. And ultimately, as we were saying last week, leadership is responsibility, right? Like if you accepted that role and you're in that style and it's required of you, be prepared to take the brunt of the heat when things happen and things is hitting the fan, and you are the one that got to speak up. You are the one
Mhm,
that has to like call the shots, right? Because it's going to be on you, like no one else.
Yep.
And because this style is not like the Democratic style, you're not going to be like, well, everybody, let's get together. What do you think?
Right.
No, it's like, I know what is best, and this is what we're going to do. And you have to have that conviction and that confidence. So this definitely takes someone that has that confidence, that conviction, that, you know, knows what they're doing, knows what they're talking about, is probably highly experienced, most likely, right, in that field, to be able to make like, you know, call the shots so quickly and efficiently and effectively for everyone, you know, for everyone's safety. So there's a little exercise that we thought about that we wanted you guys to do. If you want to do it, I highly recommend you do it. But if you do, this is the instructions, right? I want you to think about, what kind of leader do you want to be, right? On a piece of paper, just write it down, like which leadership style you think suits you best and why, right? Out of the 4 that we discussed, okay? You can also include how you think you might use this style in your daily life, right? Whether it's in your home, if you're going to school, in your job, or with your friends. Like, how do you think you can use these styles in your daily life? Or if you even, you know, again, in your job, if you are a supervisor, if you do have some type of leadership roles. So just think about it. You know, which one do you see yourself in? Which one do you aspire to be like, right? Definitely start getting this rolling for yourself, and you see what you come up with. And if you want to share with us, again, like, we love to hear what you have to say, you know, in the comments. So, like, in summary, I want to just say that there's really no one right way to lead, right? The best leaders, they adapt their style to fit the situation and the people that they're working with. All right. So keep these styles in mind as you work with others, and think about how you can be a great leader, but in your own way. Awesome. Okay.
Awesome.
Stay tuned, you guys, for part 2 as we continue with some more leadership styles, right? Because we're not done here. Okay. As usual, y'all, if you have any thoughts, comments, or anything that you'd like to share, we'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below. And with that, thank you for tuning in. And until our next episode, always remember that having faith in God, having faith in yourself, and having faith in others will create the evolution that you are seeking.